Enjoy with your headphones for a better listening experience.
Please watch till the end of the video to have the most scariest part of the story.
What's the weirdest thing you've done that you could only tell people anonymously? I didn't join the military out of patriotism, rather out of desperation and depression. It's the closest to suicide decision I've made. I wanted to die. People thank me for my service, for being selfless to the call of duty. I haven't the heart to tell them it was my most selfish decision. And during that service I've taken more lives than saved. I was a Navy corpsman. In process of trying to save a life, they died. My fellow soldiers always reassured me I wasn't to blame. Compound with my desire at the time to die. Frankly, I was just dumbfounded my wish wasn't granted when I wanted it. I always thought as I closed their eyes it should have been me. Edit, be reassured, I do not think like this anymore. When I was younger I joined an international dating site that I figured was a fraud. Put a black square as my picture and gave myself a fake name, and then looked through their users. And after about 10 minutes I had like 100 messages. Most of them were messages telling me how handsome I was or how these women fell in love with me at first sight. Now I knew it was a fraud, but whenever I felt down or got rejected for a while I would pop back on the site and read a few messages. Yes, it's kind of cringy and probably pathetic, but it made me feel better. I would just turn off that logical part of my brain that knew it was a fraud for a while and just pretend I was this popular and desirable guy. And it honestly got me through the day sometimes. I got my bottom 2 wisdom teeth removed and made the huge mistake of eating only yogurt and cheese for a few days. I did not know the effect it would have on my fecal matter. I didn't have to poop for a few days, so I knew something was up. When it finally came time for the urge to come, I sat down and started pushing and knew there was a big problem. I thought that since yogurt was soft that it would make soft poo, but no, it did not. I pushed really hard, and it didn't start to come out, but it wasn't going to get out. I didn't want to keep pushing really hard because that's how you get hemorrhoids. So, I was stuck. I actually thought I would maybe have to go to the hospital because this giant thing was stuck in my colon, and I really didn't want to do that. I had kidney stones a few years back and was in a lot of pain. I didn't know it was kidney stones at the time, and some of the pain felt like blue balls. I was at work and in a lot of pain down there. Told my coworker who was my good friend, and I had a thought that if I could jerk off it would help relieve the pain. I went to the bathroom and rubbed one out, stopping when people came in to do their business. Finished and then was still in a lot of pain. I remember going over to her and speaking. It didn't work with a pained look on my face. I went home early later on. Have never told anyone but her, haha. Drove my car into a tree with no seatbelt trying to unlive myself, failed and ended up with a badly broken right arm and left hip like total hip replacement. Everyone in my family thinks it was some accident and I've been too embarrassed to admit it wasn't. I had just graduated high school and was working for my uncle doing some home improvement projects around town during the summer. I was living with him during the work week as my home was about an hour's drive away. Anyways, I got very drunk playing battle shots at the state fair one night that summer. Got a responsible ride home. I was in the basement where my room was but had to pass like a pregnant racehorse. There was no bathroom in the basement and the only one in the house was right next to my sleeping uncle's room. It was late and I didn't want to wake him up. Well, I found his cat's litter box in the laundry room. I took without a doubt the longest pee of my life into that litter box. I probably should have buried it, but I didn't. I went to bed and woke up in the morning to my uncle yelling, "Jesus Christ, Sparky." I think I should tell him about that this Christmas. He would laugh. Next to gazebo I was drinking. It was the car of the man me and a majority of my friends greatly disliked because he acted like he was better than everyone else. So, my friend told me to pass on his car. I whipped out to pass on it, and then I said, "I'll do you one better," and grabbed the handle, and found it was unlocked. So naturally, I emptied the tank in his car. All over his seats, floorboard, in his glove compartment, center console, and everything. I was drinking beer, so it was a lot. I woke up the next day panicking because I thought someone was going to tell me and genuinely felt awful for what I did. Yes, we didn't like the man, but I know I went too far. He never found out while I was still there, thankfully. Met a woman online when I was 23. She was 57. We hooked up a few times. In my defense, she looked younger than her age and was attractive. I stopped hooking up with her when I found a woman my own age I started a real relationship with. The old lady was clear she was just having fun, which I was okay with, was in middle school, and my older sister and I somehow had a great idea. We took a bunch of our younger siblings' toys and made a horror scene with them in the basement. Like red paint blood, dismembered, hanging from the ceiling. Nasty thing. We looked at our creation and immediately realized we had gone too far. Not only did we waste my mom's money but would have traumatized out of 2 elementary schoolers. Took it all down and disposed of the evidence quickly. No clue whose idea it was, but we decided never to tell them. I know it's not shameful or wrong, but a friend and mentor died suddenly in a car accident several years back. I think of him often, but especially when I glance over my Steam friend list and see how long he's been offline. I still send him messages once in a while and pretend for a minute he'll log back in and call me up to give me an update on his kids and ask me how my wife's doing, set up another time to play guitar together and get sushi. When I was a kid, I was in a big indoor water park, which had a large whirlpool-like thing. I had to take a dump, but it was too much fun in there to get out. My childish reasoning said, the bubbly surface would cover everything underneath, so I just pulled my swimming pants and set them loose, believing the bubbly surface would hide it. It did not. I have completely destroyed my life by using heroin, and eventually fentanyl/trans. I am right now recovering from surgery. I had to have my right arm and part of my shoulder amputated due to the trans in the drugs I was using intravenously, literally rotting away my arm. I have been in the hospital for almost 3 months. I have lost everything. I have no family or friends left, no savings or income, and no place to live. I am going to be released in 6 days and I am scared. I don't know what to do or where to go. I live in Philadelphia, and I am really not happy to be leaving. Celebrating with my mom for her birthday. Depressed as all hell. After 4 shots of tequila started feeling happy and thought, haven't felt this good in months. Down 6 more shots. The last thing I remember was dancing around my dining room table. Woke up sick, throwing up majority of the next day. Listening to stories of how I was tripping. Somehow made it to basement, passed on myself. Laughed, cried. Joked around. Unfortunately, I didn't remember none of that at all. That was the first time I ever got blackout drunk. Eventually I had to go to the hospital. When I was 11, there was this plant at our home that oozed white liquid if you ripped a branch. I forgot its name. The neighborhood kids said that this white liquid was poisonous. I mixed a lot of it in a glass of water and drank it to unalive myself. Abusive household, pure chaos. The liquid was not poisonous. I remember the sweet disappointment. As an 8-year-old, I was very, very scared of and obsessed with the idea that I was a sinner and going to hell. It led to a couple of weird things. I pray for hours every night, which led to insomnia. I had to name everyone I knew or else they'd surely die because they weren't being protected by Jesus. If I missed someone on the list, I'd have to start over. Yes, this was OCD. Since I was already condemned, I thought it was better to get it over with and die rather than wait for 80 to 90 years because not knowing was driving me insane. I didn't really have an effective way to kill myself, so I'd spend a lot of time trying to hold my breath until I died and crying when I couldn't kill myself. Secondly, I was fairly sure I was the bride of the devil. I was 100% sure I had been selected to give birth to the Antichrist since I was so evil, because I masturbated. So, I'd routinely punch my stomach really hard to kill anything that might be in it. I'd intentionally fall and put myself into dangerous situations with the hope that, even if I were destined to live in hell for eternity, I could save my family from dealing with the Antichrist. Don't teach your kids religion. Even if they don't have mental health issues like me, it will mess them up in ways they will never tell you about. I hit a baby deer with my car one night and felt bad for it, so I turned around to see if it was still alive. It was. Its back end looked like a prolapsed and clearly had its spine, both legs broken or both. I didn't want to leave it suffering, so I grabbed a big rock I had in my car, taken from my work as a doorstopper after replacing it with a bigger one that worked, and after about 5 minutes of publicizing myself up, threw that thing down on the back of its head near as hard as I could. It didn't do it. It moved its head the moment the rock left my hands, so it only grazed about half its head, so it was still very much alive and in more pain than before. I felt absolutely terrible. Admittedly, I laughed a little bit at the absurdity of the whole thing, but a laugh filled with guilt and anguish than joy. So, I tried it again, and this time I was going to make sure I finished the job. After another couple of minutes of publicizing myself up, I chucked that thing at a much more downward angle and this time not holding anything back. Unlike before, it didn't move its head and the rock smashed bluntly into the back of its head, making a clear, loud, audible thump. As soon as I heard that, I felt a relief because in my mind I put it out of its misery. And for a brief moment I felt a little better about myself, thinking I redeemed myself, all the way until I looked at the deer again and it was still very much alive, but with a bloody nose. So now I failed to kill this baby deer twice with a considerably large rock and my guilt is boiling over, so I decide I can't do it again and just drive off wishing I had never even turned around in the first place. In the rear view mirror it still had its head up and was twirling around like a Beyblade trying to get up. All of this took place directly in front of a random person's house I drive by every day late at night, and I often wonder if someone saw the entire 15-minute ordeal go down. Pro tip: if you need to kill something with a rock, it's never a big enough rock, and movies/TV shows are not accurate in their depictions of the archetype. When I was in elementary school, my brother would have football practice at the local middle school. My dad was the coach and would always bring me and my sister along so he could watch us. I would always have to use the bathroom at this time, but the practices were later in the afternoon, so the school would already be locked up. So instead of asking where a bathroom would be, I would just poop in random spots at the school and didn't think much of it. Fast forward a few years later, I went to that same middle school. Not sure how the subject came up, but a teacher talked about how a couple of years ago there was a poop bandit that would poop around campus but was never caught. I found out that day that I was the poop bandit. I was starting my shift at an old job, and when the guy before me left, he threw a stack of half-eaten food in the bin. All random stuff: half a bottle of Coke, some Doritos, the base of a muffin, plus a few other things. I have no idea why, but after a few hours I grabbed a Dorito and ate it. Then another one. Then had a sip of Coke. Over the course of my 5-hour shift I ate all of his leftover food. I have no clue why I felt compelled to do this. When I was like 11, I saw my teacher's email address over her shoulder one time in class. Proceeded to make myself a new email address that evening and emailed her pretending to be the principal of the school and threatening to fire her if she kept giving us homework. She threatened the class with the police the next day to try and find out which one of us was Lamau, but I was never actually caught, so I guess it's okay, though I was absolutely terrified of being thrown in jail for a few weeks. Not that grave, but still haunts me. Was in an internship position, so I had to take notes for a meeting. Usually, I work these out myself afterwards, but this time one of my supervisors wanted to go through them with me. Was really bored during the meeting, it was just really dull, so offhandedly wrote down something like "boring nappy time, want sleep" in the sideline of my written notebook. Handed the notebook to my supervisor afterwards because she wanted to dictate while I typed them out on the PC. Literally it was plastered on the first page, so she read the stupid alliteration aloud. Immediately realized I faked up by forgetting I wrote that. The look she gave me while she just sounded out the dumb line with equal confusion and dumbfoundedness is still etched in my brain. Fortunately, she left soon afterwards, so didn't have to see her again. Still think about that sometimes and experience full cringe. Got drunk at a party, decided to play truth or dare. Dared to go around the neighborhood and ring people's doorbells. Decided to up the ante and wait until they answered the door, no clue why. Somehow ended up going around donating for a good cause, i.e., leaving a few cents on people's fence posts at 3 a.m. I once found a family friend after committing suicide by hanging, first on the scene. He left a note and bunch of cash on the table counter and an envelope to pay for the funeral. Says as much in the letter, saying his final goodbyes. I was a little tight on money, so I just took it. But I had to take the letter too because it talked about the money. Still have it hidden. As a kid I used to torture Furies, the toy that talks. I used to use a slingshot to hammer nails at the thing as it called me its friend. I also used to set up concentration camps for ants using double-sided sticky tape during the summer. If they tried to escape, their fate would be horrendous. I'd like to confirm I am not a psychopath nor serial killer. When I was maybe 15 years old, my stepdad had his fingernail completely come off, and one day I was home by myself and got curious of what it felt like. Me being stupid decided I wanted to take my toenail, big toenail, off myself to find out if it hurt. I got some tools and shimmied them under the nail and went at it. It hurt so bad, of course, but I kept going, and when I was nearly at the end the pain was too much for me to continue doing it the way I was. I knew I had to take it all off because I had gotten that far, and I took a deep breath and ripped the remaining part off. It was done. My toenail was off. I lied to my family when they got home and told them I stubbed my toe really hard, and it fell off. The pain was worse after the nail was off for a while, and putting shoes on was a nightmare. I have never told anyone about this before. When I was in first grade I was a bit of a troublemaker and used the bathroom as an excuse to get out of class. My teacher caught on, and I was only limited to one bathroom break a day. Well, one fateful day I used up my one bathroom break to get out of class for 10 minutes later in the day. I had to beg my teacher to leave, but she reminded me I used up my one bathroom break for the day. So, I sat there hedgehogging, using my focus to not dirt my pants in the middle of the class. I actually held it for a solid 30 minutes before the bell rang, and I got up and sprinted to the bathroom. I got about 5 steps out of the classroom before I dirt my pants. I was mortified of being caught and being called Poopy Pants Boy for the rest of my life, so fight or flight kicked in and I ran to my school bus. Not really sure how it didn't fall out of pants at all, but I got lucky in that regard. I sat in the very front seat where no one else really sat because everyone else sat towards the back of the bus. On the bus ride home, everyone started to notice a smell. Everyone started accusing each other of farting, and the whole time I was sitting in the front praying no one would catch on I dirt my pants. At this point, the bus driver was also annoyed as they smelled it too and was telling all the kids on the bus to settle down. Luckily for me, my house was only 10 minutes from the school and one of the first stops. After the scariest 10 minutes of my life, the bus doors opened, and I ran into my house successfully without being caught. I threw my underwear and pants in the trash and took them out. I have never told anyone this. I am now 25. We did some exchanging gift in class under the category of, it should be unexpected. And so, the extra in me wanted it to be really unexpected and funny at the same time, so I decided to gift a condom and eggplant to the person I'm giving it to. Everyone was anonymous to their receivers, and so that is what makes it suspenseful and thrilling. Before the gifts were distributed, I was honestly excited, thinking they would laugh their asses off to it. Even consulted my close friends before buying if it might be a sad thing. They told me it's just condom, lol. It is definitely fine. Reason I was pretty assured myself that nothing is really wrong with it. So, when everyone in class got their gifts already, we opened them at the same time. The receiver of my gift did not like it at all. She was disgusted, and the whole class was, too, the total opposite of what I was expecting from them. Collectively, my class was rowdy and a bunch of talkative jokesters, reason I assumed they'd be pretty chill with it. Can't believe they reacted that badly, literally made me crumble in embarrassment. We were 16 to 17 at that time, probably why I can say this time that the reaction was understandable. I knew someone who had an emu on their farm. Got a little drunk once and bet my friends I could find an ostrich on a random farm. In Minnesota, they figured out I knew where I was going but were too drunk to care and wanted to see said ostrich. We get there and they're all freaking out, can't believe I knew where an ostrich was this whole time, it was an emu. I get betted that I can't go into its kennel with it. Go into the kennel and the emu begins to peck at me. I panicked and found an old pipe on the ground. With adrenaline and alcohol running in me, that emu did not live. Biggest regret I've ever had. I was crying before I even got off the farm for doing such a stupid thing for no reason, and think about it to this day, over 5 years ago. Latin class in high school. Mr. Ledbetter was the teacher. Very tall bald man. When he would turn his back to the class, I would torpedo spitballs through a straw at the front chalkboard. This went on for several days when he finally noticed. He stopped the class and requested that the perpetrator come forward. Lots of awkward silence. He said that if no one would come forward, then he would hold the whole class responsible. With overwhelming guilt, I confessed. The only problem was he didn't believe me. I was literally begging him to believe as I was escorted to the vice principal's office. Mr. Ledbetter said that he would never believe that someone like me would be guilty of such heinous behavior. That was 51 years ago. When I was in elementary school, I went to a local Mormon church as a way to make some new friends after my family had moved. I'm an only child, so a lot of my friend making was just me finding someone I thought was cool and following them around like a lost puppy doing the things they did. I didn't know how long Mormon church was or much about what to do, so sometime between sermons I noticed a huge rack of Mormon Bibles and grabbed one to try and read from and fit in a bit better. For context, I grew up Christian, and the church I'd gone to had tons of Bibles for free use around the church. I took it home with me afterward, and it didn't take long at all for word to spread around that someone was missing their personal scripture. I was super embarrassed, and in my kid brain the worst thing I could possibly do was steal someone's Bible at church. I genuinely felt like I'd done something horribly wrong, and I'd never live up to it if I told anyone. So, what did I do? I dropped it down the gutter grate across the street from my house. I watched that thing disintegrate for a year with shame every morning I walked to the bus stop.
When I gained a lot of weight due to drinking problems and bad anxiety after an accident, I had an absolutely terrible self-image and felt really unattractive. That started spiraling into not eating well and developing skin problems. Cue no libido, hiding from my husband, and trying to hide from the world. My husband had me download Tinder and Kick. He took a few nice photos of me and wrote about my interests and hobbies and posted them to ask what people thought of me. We even posted some nudes on adult sites. That was a mind-opening experience. Definitely helped me feel better in my own skin and about my brain, and was the first step to healing. Now I'm just a bit overweight, no longer addicted to alcohol, feeling strong, and have a dynamic with my husband.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.